Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to be covering two main topics. First, the introduction, integration, and analysis of quotations and the proper way to approach that. And secondly, a symbolic analysis of the spider's thread. All of this material has been covered in class previously, and you have access to both the physical copies of the handout that I'm going to go over and a digital copy that has been posted on Omnibox for several weeks. First of all, I have here a definition of symbolism. Some objects in stories can be symbols. They represent something else. For instance, a watch could represent the simple theme or the subject of time. Or if the watch came from a character's father and he loves the watch very much, the watch could represent or symbolize his connection to the father. When you're thinking about a symbol in a story, look for an important object that seems to be critical to the story or to the characters inside the story. In the spider's thread, the story tells us that the spider thread itself is a symbol for something because the spider's thread is in the title, and the characters are connected to the object. Kandata climbs up the spider thread. The spider thread is incredibly important, and it's described throughout the story several times. That indicates to us that the spider's thread is an important symbol. When you try to interpret a symbol, to find out what the author is saying through the symbol, you have to look at several things. First, look at the words used to describe the object. Think about what those words make you feel, or what they're associated with, what they're connected to. Is the author trying to connect that object and what the object represents to those feelings or to those associations? The actions that are associated with it. How do the characters treat it? What do they do with it? How it functions as an object in the story. What happens to the object? Is it preserved? Is it destroyed? Is it lost? For instance, if we have a pocket watch that's owned by a main character in the story, and he received that pocket watch from his father, maybe because it's important to him and he got it from his father, it represents his connection with his father. If the object is lost, if he misplaces the pocket watch, maybe the story is saying something through the symbol about the way in which his relationship with his father is not good anymore. Maybe he's lost his relationship with his father. Maybe it's broken in some way. Think about what the object does in the story or what happens to the object in the story. And lastly, think about how people feel about the object. Maybe this main character hated the watch. He tucked it away inside a drawer and forgot about it. Maybe that's showing us that he actually has a poor relationship with his father, and he has a poor relationship with his father because he's chosen to reject it. He's hiding the watch away. Symbolically, it represents how he has thrown away the relationship that he had with his father. There are many different uses of symbolism, and we always have to look at the specific context, the language that's being used, the way in which the story treats the object, in order to know what the symbol represents. In order to understand what a symbol represents, we have to interpret a quotation. When we're interpreting a quotation, or when we want to prove a point about the story, whether it's about a character, or about a symbol, or a piece of setting, we have to use quotations. We have to use examples from the story. The next part of this handout that has already been given to you in class deals with the way that we integrate quotations. There are three major things that you need to do when you have a quotation. You need to introduce it, you need to integrate it, and you need to explain it or analyze it. Introducing it means just giving a little bit of context, telling your reader where this quotation came from. Integrating the quotation means putting the quotation into your own sentence. And explaining the quotation means analyzing the quotation without repeating it to show how it proves something. Usually in your paragraph, you want to prove a point about a character or about the meaning of a symbol or about the meaning of the setting. To do that, you have to give me a specific example, a quotation from the story, and then explain how it proves your point. Let's take a quick look at the way in which I do these three things in an example. So, in an example of analysis here, I begin by introducing the quotation. I tell the reader where in the story they can find this quotation. Now, I don't say, you can find this quotation here. It's something that's fluid and organic. I mention something that's happening in the story at this moment, and I tell my reader who is speaking at this moment, or who is thinking, or who's acting. Kandata views the spider thread for the first time. That would be an introduction to the quotation. I'm letting my reader know it's at this point in the story that this quotation derives. Then I integrate the quotation into my own sentence. It can be as simple as saying something like, he thinks, comma, and then I give the quotation about what he thinks. If he could once get hold of the thread and climb far enough, he would eventually get out of hell. With luck, he might even reach paradise. And then I have an in-text citation. Those in-text citations are covered in another video and another series of lectures. Then I need to explain the quotation or analyze it. Inside a paragraph, I'm trying to prove something. I have my main idea. I'm using a quotation to help support that main idea. Here, all I have is an example of analysis or explanation. Okay. Rather than repeating what the quotation says literally, I look at what the quotation says and then analyze it and develop it to explain how it proves something. His belief that luck and his own strength can save him shows that he does not understand the gift he was given. He does not realize that mercy gave him the chance to escape. Instead, he continues to trust in the strength that he used to hurt other people and send him to hell in the first place. So this quotation doesn't say that directly, but I can look at it and interpret it to say, I've learned something about his character. He doesn't appreciate the gift that he's been given because he trusts in his own strength. He thinks that if he can climb out of hell, he can escape and make it to paradise. So he doesn't appreciate the gift that he's been given, and he still trusts in his own strength. That's not stated in the quotation, but I can interpret the quotation to show that he does think that way. Now, let's take a look at 4 different ways that you can integrate quotations into the story. You can introduce the quotation with a complete sentence and a colon. So for example, Kandata knows that he should not kill the spider. In this case, this serves as my introduction to the quotation. I can use a colon just as I would use a period, and then have the quotation. That's one way of integrating a quotation, of putting it into your own sentence. Use an introductory or explanatory phrase, but not a complete sentence, separated from the quotation with a comma. So, Kandata knows even a little creature such as this has life. In this case, I don't have an introduction to the quotation, really. I need to give more context in the sentence before this one. But I do have an integrated quotation in that Kandata knows, I have a verb here, comma, and then even a little creature has life, the quotation. Make sure you're using the right kind of verb here. If Kandata says something, he speaks, he declares, and then you give a quotation of him speaking, that could work. If it's something that the narrator says, you wouldn't be able to say Kandata says, you'd have to say, well, Kandata knows, or the narrator suggests, comma. The other way of integrating a quotation would be make the quotation a part of your own sentence using the word that in place of a comma. So Kandata knows that even a little creature such as this has life, and so spares the spider. He doesn't kill the spider. Or you could have a short quotation, only a few words as part of your own sentence. Because even a little creature is alive, Kandata spares the spider. So here, I could write the sentence, because even a little creature is alive, Kandata spares the spider. It's exactly the same as a sentence that I would write, but I've taken something specific from the text and put it into my own sentence as if it were my own words, indicating where the quotation begins and where the quotation ends using quotation marks. As a brief review of symbolism before we move into the symbolism in this story, remember that symbolism occurs when an author allows us to focus on a crucial object in the story. The object will then represent an idea, a theme, or a concept that is crucial to the story. Things to notice. You should focus on the described objects and its characteristics. Try to connect those characteristics to ideas, themes, and concepts through association, connotations, and interpretations. Let's take a look at how we would do that using the symbol of the spider thread in the spider's thread. And again, we know it's a symbol because it's an important object in the story. It's crucial to the story. The other characters think about it and talk about it a lot. And it's even in the title of the story. So those are all clues that tell us that the spider's thread is probably a symbol. Usually, you have to look for quotations inside the story, passages in the story where the object is discussed or described. In this handout, I've given you 3. We're going to take a look at each of these and discuss how we would go about interpreting them or analyzing them with respect to symbolism. Keep in mind those key techniques that we use. The words that are associated with the symbol, the way characters think about them, and how the object works in the story. By happy chance, Buddha turned to see a heavenly spider spinning a beautiful silver thread atop a lotus leaf the color of shimmering jade. Gently lifting the spider thread, he lowered it straight down through the pearl-like blossoms to the depths far below. Now, how would I go about analyzing this example of symbolism? I know the spider's thread must be a symbol because it's an important object in the story. But what do I look at and how do I look at the language associated with the object in order to interpret what it means? Well, thinking about its context, Buddha takes up the spider's thread and lowers it to Kandata. He's given Kandata a chance to escape hell. So thinking about what the object does in the story, the purpose of the actual literal physical object of the spider thread, I start connecting it with the idea of a second chance. Or when Kandata looks up at the spider thread, he starts to feel hope. He hopes that he can escape hell. So these feelings or concepts of hope and a second chance are connected with the spider's thread. Maybe it represents those things. Then I start looking at the language. Look at the words that are used to describe it. It's a beautiful silver thread. It's sitting atop a lotus leaf the color of shimmering jade. So the associations or the connotations, those things that I think about when I hear those words are richness, beauty, precious metals, something incredibly valuable. Akutagawa, the author of this story, is connecting the spider's thread with those concepts. Could he then be saying the same thing about what the spider thread might represent? Hope or a second chance. Does this quotation then tell us, through the symbol of the spider's thread, well, that hope is incredibly precious because the author is using words like beautiful silver to describe it? Other interpretations based on symbolism. Look at how characters interact with the object. He gently lifts the spider's thread. Well, if he has to lift it gently, that means that he has to care for it, that it's precious and delicate. It's fragile. It could be broken easily. And that makes sense. A spider's thread can be destroyed by a simple gust of wind. You can just pass your hand through it and the entire web is destroyed. So, this example, using those passages we highlighted, or using those words we highlighted, like beautiful silver, and the fact that he lifts it gently, tells us that the spider's thread is beautiful and valuable and rare, but also fragile. And we have already said, well, the spider's thread is Kandata's only hope to escape hell. So it represents hope. This example or this quotation then symbolically tells us that the spider's thread and hope, well, hope is precious, valuable, but easily destroyed, easily lost. Let's take a look at another example and how we would interpret it. Yes, indeed, raising his head, Kandata chanced to look up towards the sky above the pond of blood, and saw the gleaming silver spider thread, so slender and delicate, slipping stealthily down through the silent darkness from the high, high heavens, coming straight for him. Kandata clapped his hands in joy. If only he could take hold of this thread and climb up and up, he could probably escape from hell. And maybe, with luck, he could even enter paradise. Again, look at how characters react to the object, what they think about it, the words that are being used to describe the object, and how the object functions in the story. Again, we have that notion of the spider thread being Kandata's only hope. And look at how he responds. He responds with joy. So He views that object and the hope that it represents as precious and valuable. It's the only thing that has brought him joy in his misery while he suffers in hell. He hasn't felt joy ever since he arrived in hell. It's hell. But now he does because he has this precious and valuable hope. But that would be characterization. That's analysis of his character. Let's take a look at the symbol of the spider's thread in this passage. Well, again, we have these ideas of the gleaming silver spider thread, so slender and delicate. So hope is precious and easily lost in that example as well. How else could we interpret it? Well, it might not fit with the argument that we developed from this first example, but it's slipping stealthily down through the silent darkness. So look at the contrast here that Akutagawa has established. The spider thread is gleaming silver, and it's going through the silent darkness. So you have the light of the shimmering, gleaming spider's thread, and you have the silent darkness. There's a juxtaposition or a contrast between two unlike things. Think about how much more beautiful the spider's thread must be when you are in a place of perfect, pure darkness. Suddenly, that light shines out all the brighter. Think about when you're walking in the darkness and you see a light. That light is almost blinding because you're used to the darkness. Here, the spider's thread is all the more bright and all the more beautiful because it's in the darkness. It's contrasted against the darkness. So symbolically, the story, this passage could be telling us that hope is all the more precious to people when they're in their darkest times. Or hope appears all the more valuable when people are their most desperate. Now let's take a look at the third example. At that very instant, the spider thread, which until then had been perfectly fine, broke with a snap, just where Kandata was hanging from it. Behind him, all that remained was the dangling short end of the spider thread from paradise, delicately gleaming in the moonless, starless sky. Think about the characters' interactions with the object, what they're doing, what they're feeling, and how that tells us what the symbol represents. Kandata is now going to look up when he is in hell and see the end of that spider's thread. Every time he sees it now, he's going to be reminded of the hope that he lost. So, symbolically, the spider's thread that is now broken and lost, well, it represents the way in which Kandata's hope has been destroyed. It's lost, and has been lost easily in that one moment. But it also represents how hope can be a cruelty. When somebody has hope and then loses it, they're far worse off than they were if they had never had hope in the first place. Now, the broken spider thread represents the painful reality that Kandata will never have another chance. When you're looking at symbolism, remember that you need to give me specific quotations that you can analyze, integrating them, introducing them, and explaining them. And you need to look at those three key elements of the context for the characters, the context for the story, and the context for the language or the words that are being used to describe the object. Can you use those to interpret what the symbol means? If you have any questions about symbolism in the spider thread or the final essay, please feel free to reach out and contact me. I'd be happy to help you.